Hello everybody, welcome to the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are taking a half hour of time to have a conversation with Mary Farnsworth, who is the new Regional Forester for Forest Service Region 4 out of Ogden, Utah, and it covers a good portion of the West, far beyond the state's boundaries. Mary, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We really need to get to know you. Some of us who've been watching things realize that you came out of Idaho down here, but tell us a little bit about your career path and what led you to this region.
Well, sure. I'm excited to be in this new role as Regional Forester, and it is the highlight of a long career. And I've really only worked for the Forest Service, so it has been my passion over time. I started my career I have a degree in forest management from Humboldt State University, go Lumberjacks. And I started as a young, I think I might have been 17 or 18 year old, working summers, as many people do for the Forest Service. Started in Walla Walla, Washington on the Umatilla in forest management, kind of in that timber arena, and spent several years there. And while I was there, I worked on fire crews. It is a kind of a collateral duty that many people do in the Forest Service. They have their job, and when the fire bell rings, we go. And so I had a lot of experience in fire, predominantly on hand crews, Pulaski and shovel, and mode of transportation, predominantly hiking into places. And so then got a job back in California, in fire, the fire branch of the Forest Service, and worked my way earning fire credentials, basically. And there's certifications you get as you go along, and became an incident commander and in the planning section and leadership roles. I wanted to experience leading in emergency situations under pressure. And I got that experience pretty quickly. So did that for a while, actually worked in fire management in our Washington office in Washington, D.C. And then kind of popped out of there, became what's called a line officer within the Forest Service. And that's a position of leadership and decision making. And so went to Bend, Oregon for a little while, and then up to Idaho, as you referenced, as the forest supervisor there on the Idaho Panhandle National Forest. Then hopped down here to Ogden as the Deputy Regional Forester, and now I'm so very, very fortunate to have been selected as Regional Forester.
This is a span of 3 decades, if I remember correctly.
A little over 30 years.
Yeah. So you've had 4 years of college, 4 or 6, and 30 years of OJT.
A lot of field experience, which I value greatly.
So just kind of a question aside that really doesn't have much to do with the conversation. What do you like better? Do you like being out there, in the crisis moment on a fire on the front line, or as you spent some time as a hot shot, or do you like the string pulling of administration better? What suits you better?
Well, that's a hard question, because when I was younger, I had better knees, and I really enjoyed being out and about, and being on a hotshot crew where the camaraderie is just super solid, and you're working with the people next to you, and accomplishing tangible things, fighting fire, and doing field work, and being out and about, being outside. And that's really why I wanted into forestry in the first place. But over time, I have a knee replacement, and I have found that I can make a big difference as an administrator and as a decision maker in our organization. And so I have liked both. And I think it's really important for leaders to have some of that background. And I'm very fortunate to have a forestry background, timber, and land management, and the fire piece of the puzzle, which allows me to make decisions right now in situations where we have some issues around forest health, and we're dealing with the risk of catastrophic fire on our landscapes. And so I'm thankful for my very specific background that I have in the issues that we're dealing with today.
Well, that actually is a really good segue. So let's dig into the suitability and the important role of fire management, particularly in Utah, that maybe people have forgotten, but last summer that was a pretty hot-shot topic for us. We will be right back with our conversation with Mary Farnsworth, Regional Forester on the county seat. Stay with us. Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking with Mary Farnsworth, who's the Regional Forester. Got a little background on what led her to this position. And I almost feel, given the problems the forests, particularly in Utah and some of the surrounding areas in the Intermountain West, have experienced, this is almost like a fateful calling for you to become the Regional Forester. Fires were a big deal for us last year, and the last couple of years. We've had some pretty big fires that have caused community damage and a lot of erosion, and those topics now are still coming up when we're in the mitigation stage of it with landslides and water systems and the like. What do you feel your goals are, your responsibilities that you want to tackle in fire management, and how we change what we've done in the last 20 years?
Well, yeah, you're right. Last year was a large fire season for us here in Utah, but it was even larger in other areas. We're very fortunate, actually, to not have what we saw in California, the events that we saw in Oregon and Washington, and even in Colorado. They had just some really catastrophic fires. We had a tough fire season. And many of the Forest Service folks that work here in Utah actually traveled to California and Oregon, Washington, because our organization goes to wherever they're needed the most. And so while we didn't have the noteworthy fires per se here in Utah that other places did, our folks were ever present all over the place. And they work very hard to do that. Here in Utah, we had several very large fires. And I would say that we have some unique challenges with our water systems and our risk to communities. And that's where my effort is, and as we go forward, needs to be. Now, with the virus, we saw a tremendous number of people come recreate on the national forests and the national parks to some extent, but on the national forest we saw 500% increase in the number of people recreating. And due to that, we had an amazing, probably the most ever number of human-caused fires in the state. And so we need the public's help because those are all preventable. Human-caused fires are preventable. And many of the larger fires that we had in the state were because people were careless with their campfires, or with matches or other starts. We need folks to pay attention to that because those are all preventable. And so as we look forward to dealing with fire here in Utah, we're prioritizing our efforts around those places that have infrastructure and that have water systems and that need some sort of mitigation, fuels treatment to protect them from the big fires that we see. So it's a combination of forest health and dealing with fuels reduction and having the public help out by not having these human-caused starts.
Do you feel that there's a backlog that is surmountable at getting the general forest health? We've got a lot of forests here that have blight in them, which does not help the fire situation, and some of that is probably caused by overgrowth or or overly active fire prevention, lack of fires. In a smaller scale, there's a timbering issue, and there've been some what people feel are some real challenges to timbering commercially within the forest. But can we get past that backlog of, do you think there's the path to get back to being able to proactively maintain healthy forests with all the tools in the toolbox?
Well, we're giving it a real big shot, and so we're doing a variety of things. We're actually harvesting more timber in the past couple of years than we have in the past. And so we've gone from, in the region, harvesting around 133 million board feet over time, average to over 155. So small increase, but important increase. So it's a combination of treatments. So there's an opportunity to use timber sales to sell material, create jobs, and reduce fuels. There's another element that's non-commercial. That's non-commercial product per se, bushes and such, that needs to go. And that's just fuels treatment that we need to remove, understory, that sort of thing. And it doesn't have a commercial element. So we're using all kinds of tools, whether it be a timber sale or a prescribed burn or mechanical treatments, lopping and scattering using just field crews to lop and scatter, or mechanical equipment, feller bunchers and stuff to go clip down material and stack it, and then we sell decks. So we need everything. The big change recently is based on data science. We in the past have done, it's characterized as random acts of conservation or forest management, random acts where we put down postage-sized treatments all over the place. The data now is in the science, it promotes larger landscapes. If we're going to take care of the amount of landscape that we need to go bigger. We need to mimic previous fires. And you can't do that at a couple acres at a time, because that's not what we're experiencing on the landscape. So the bigger the treatment continuous, the more effective it is on the landscape. And so that's what we're kind of after now. And so we've been working through shared stewardship with our friends from the state forester, to really focus on, if I had $1 to spend, where would I do that? And in that spot where we need to treat because of water systems, infrastructure, things we want to protect, and or real forest health issues, we need to identify where that is and then do a landscape scale treatment.
Is there real, I mean, I know there are pockets out there that are really resistant to doing anything with the forest, treating it at all, and they put a lot of pressure on it. But from my perspective, as I've looked at it, and I've seen some of these larger projects that are a little bit more landscapes scale, when you look past the cycle of getting the stuff down and getting the ecosystems back, it really seems better for wildlife. You know, you need the conifer stands and tree stands for wildlife to have cover in, but you also need to have some grasses and forbs for them for forage, and be able to have them not too far apart, but enough apart that it protects from fire and stuff like that. Do we have to, part of our job, trying to sell people on the concept that it's okay to do this and that it creates a better ecosystem when it's done? I'll just leave it at that question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure it's all about convincing. We have people that are very polarized in their views in our country. And so, and it's hard to move people from a polarized end of the spectrum into say, a moderate approach. So that's the difficulty. And so I think we need to, my perspective is we need to listen to the information and the data, and we need to manage appropriately per what that tells us. And that changes over time. And we learn as we go. But for me, we need to deal with catastrophic fire. We need to deal with forest health, because the years of fire suppression over time have caused thickets, and we see that in the woods. And so we need to do something about that. Not on every acre, but where we have these priority landscapes, where we have infrastructure and people, we need to take action. And
Prescriptive action.
Prescriptive action and smart action, and based on science. And that's what we're doing. And it's not on every acre. but it's on enough of the landscape in the right places at the right scale to make a difference for forest health, for wildlife, for fire risk reduction, those sorts of things. So I guess I prescribed a moderate approach to things. You can't do everything on every acre, but where we have these focus priorities, we need to address them.
Great. This is a great segue for us. You brought up another specter that looms over forest lands, and that's recreation. You alluded to it.
Yes.
I'd like to address that when we come back from a commercial break. We're having a conversation with Mary Farnsworth, the Regional Forester for Region 4 here, headquartered in Ogden, Utah. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute. Welcome back to the county seat. We're having a conversation with Mary Farnsworth, Regional Forester here in the state of Utah and other regions around the West. In our last segment where we were talking about fire management, you alluded to the fact that there has just been a huge increase in recreation. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the forest to have more application for recreation, for people to camp and to explore and to ride trails and hike trails and get their horses out there? Is that good or bad?
Yes. It is good and bad. And I'm thrilled, actually, with the amount of recreation that folks are getting out. And the virus has affected it, like you mentioned. We're seeing a massive increase in recreationists coming to national forests.
Were you surprised?
No. That being said, there's impacts, and it happened quickly, but it shows the relevance of public land in people's lives, and that's the exciting piece for me as a public land manager. I'm excited that folks are experiencing their national forests and getting out. That being said, there's a lot of first-time recreationists out and about. I think RV sales boomed extensively. And so folks, there are many people that don't know how to go camping responsibly. And so my pitch is as we get people out and about enjoying the national forest, we really need people to take responsibility and take responsibility for picking up their trash. It is not the Forest Service responsibility to pick up after people. We need everybody to steward the public lands in that manner. We saw a massive increase in human-caused fires, predominantly because people did not extinguish their campfires. That's something that we've taught for years. Go Smokey Bear. But this past year, people did not extinguish their campfires as much as we needed them to. Massive increase in human-caused fire starts. So we need people, it's wonderful that people are out and about recreating on public land. So I'm thrilled. But we need them to do it responsibly.
How do you go about accomplishing that? Keeping recreation open? I mean, the easiest answer is just say, everybody go away. And there are a lot of people who are afraid that that's what the Forest Service are going to say is everybody go away and we'll just swing gates across the roads till they're grown over and people won't be able to get there. But that would be a waste of the resource.
Well, I'm not a fan, and I'm not a fan of telling people to go away. I'm quite the opposite. Public land is there for everybody. And it's really important that folks can go enjoy their piece of that public land. Now, that being said, we have, like I mentioned earlier, polarized groups of people who want to go do different things on their public lands. How cool is that? The challenge there is we can't have that happen on every acre. So there's wonderful places that people can go use their motorized equipment in the system. There are wonderful places where people can go and get solitude and enjoy the backcountry. It's not just all on the same acre. So we need people to do their best to look out after their, recreate responsibly, pick up their trash, be mindful of the impact they're having on other people. And I would make the pitch for some respect. Not everybody likes everything And so just understanding that is important these days. I would also say that we have a lot of places that are heavily impacted. And they're the areas closest to home. That being said, there's wonderful places in the system on whole. And I would encourage people to, instead of going to the one trailhead that's impacted the most, to branch out a little bit, spread out a little bit, and go experience a new place that's not quite as impacted as some of the local places right next to home.
Excellent. Well, that's very good advice. We could talk a whole half hour about this, and maybe we should at some time in the future. We're going to take a commercial break. We'll come back with our closing thoughts on the county seat. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the county seat. We're having a conversation with Mary Farnsworth, the regional forester for Region 4. I'm saying that so I get it memorized because I came into this interview not remembering the number. Anyway, Mary, you talk with a great deal of pride about the people that work for the Forest Service. What's your concern about employee health in the Forest Service system?
Thanks for asking the question. I am passionate about working with the people that we get to work with in the Forest Service. And over the past year, we've dealt with the virus, and we've kept our work going. National forests have been open, and we've had to modify how we've done our work, but we've continued to do our work, and we continue to do it extremely well. And that's due to the employees' dedication to serving the public and their passion for land management and the national forest system that we get to work with. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't brag on them a bit. They're a humble group, and they love what they do. They're passionate about what they do, but they don't speak up much about it. We're kind of in the background many times. And there's, as I mentioned earlier, we have a polarized society that wants this and wants that, and our folks give it their best to deliver with little fanfare, and yet they are awesome. And they've worked extremely hard in these difficult situations with the virus, reduced capacity to get work done, and they've delivered on our responsibilities in an incredible manner. And they're the best group of folks we could ever get to work with. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to say that because I truly feel that I'm blessed by having this group of people to work with.
If you had a magic megaphone to Washington, D.C., to the legislative branch of government that funds your operation, would being able to increase your staffs to deliver better service, do you feel underfunded for personnel?
I'm proud of the employees that we do have, and with more resources, we would be able to deliver more public service.
Okay, well, that's very well put. Utah delegation, did you catch that? Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on the county seat. We appreciate your taking the time to tune in and be part of this conversation and dialogue, and we ask that you get onto social media, respond to this. If you got questions, please put them forward. We'd love to have a discussion about it, and share this with your friends. We'll see you next week on the county seat. Thank you for watching the County Seat. Be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications to keep up to date on the program and happenings around Utah.